Okay, so let's look at the other side. We already looked at if someone is the one who has zero or very little interest in sex. What should the spouse do if they're married to someone who just doesn't have the drive or, is just not interested in sex?
So I think that is a really hard place to be. And depending on the condition of the relationship, because this isn't, again, there's all of these things that are going into the same pot, so to speak. And so it might even be that you have a conversation with your spouse and say, you know what, this is what I've noticed. This is a pattern that I see in our relationship. Do you see that changing in the future? Do you know what I mean? Because I think that information is helpful. And I always think that asking questions is helpful, because then if your spouse comes back and says, yes, I would like to have a sexual relationship, but we've had all of these things and I don't know how to work past that, then great. Then you have a place to work from. If your spouse comes back and says, no, I'm really not interested in that anymore. I would be fine if we never have sex. I still think that's helpful information, but then you have some decisions to make, that what does that look like for you being in a relationship with somebody who has made it clear that they never intend to have sex with you again. And so what are you going to do? Where are you going to get the support and the counsel and everything else that you're going to need to make healthy decisions for you going forward? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I know it's really hard when you can't say, okay, here it is, A, B, C, and you're good. Because it doesn't work that way. Like you said, Nick, that the human experience doesn't work that way.
Well, and we've talked about it on a lot of the podcasts that we can't make someone else change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we're the ones that want sex in the marriage and it's not happening, we have to be careful that we're not getting into that mindset of, if I just did the right things, turned the right dials, had the right behaviors, then we'll get sex. I can make them change. You could be doing a lot of the right things, and there's things going on that are outside of your control. And in any marriage situation, when someone is stuck in a place where you feel like there's something that they're choosing that's significantly hindering our relationship and I can't make them change, there are some principles or ideas we would give to anyone in that situation that are consistent. We'd say, like you said, Heather, you need support. You need people in your life that you can go to help understand, how do I work through this? And you really need to have a dedication to taking this to God in prayer, to say, Lord, I can't change their heart. I can't change how they feel. Would you help me know how to act in the best way, what I should do about it, what my response should be? And I think, too, maybe backing off from that a little bit, there are oftentimes when I see in these situations more that the spouse can do than they realize. Because sometimes the attitude is like, hey, I've been sober for 6 months or X number of days. I did group like you wanted me to. I'm not looking at porn anymore, so now we should have sex. That it's almost this entitlement, earned it. Doesn't she see how much I've grown? Now we should have sex. And yet maybe in the situations I'm thinking of, often that spouse is missing that there are still some pretty huge areas for the spouse that are not getting addressed, whether it's emotional connection, date nights, help with the kids. Just sometimes things like, well, but I'm not looking at porn, so we should have sex. And if you kind of have that arrival mentality or entitlement mentality, that's a good thing to check at the door and say, the goal here isn't that I get sex again for me. Is your motive, I really want my spouse and I to have a mutually edifying intimacy and connection physically. I want it for both of us. Because if you just want it for you and she or he's turning you down, like, well, maybe your feelings are hurt and you need to go process that. But it was about you anyway, and that's not what God created sex for in the marriage. So, and I get that none of us have totally pure motives, but at a minimum, you should see that, my goal here needs to be for us. And I hear a lot of guys in group that under the surface, I can realize their goal is for me, getting what I need. And if that's where you're at, you've still got work to do, honestly, too, even while, you're maybe hoping that some growth happens in the relationship.
If you guys ever had those situations where you ask a question and you're sure you're not going to get a legit answer, you're just like, why does this happen? And then someone says something and you're just like, oh, okay. I guess that makes sense. I had one of those recently in regards to this topic with my wife. And she's like, I don't think you realize that how you interact with our boys and when you get angry, how that impacts our intimacy. And I was one of those like, well, geez, okay. Like, thanks for being honest, like, okay. But I feel like that curiosity has served me well, and realizing, just as an example, Nick, of what you're talking about, that there are things outside of even my relationship with my wife that directly impact my relationship with my wife. And so if I get angry or I lash out at my kids or I'm having a bad attitude, like that impacts everyone around me, not just me and my sons. It impacts even my ability to connect with my wife. So I think I would just say on a personal level, doing that is going to be beneficial. And it may be things that you've never thought of before. It's like, what does it have to do with, like, it's just our kids, but it definitely is connected. And then I think I keep thinking about what Bob Vandermeer has said so many times in his sessions, and then even on the podcast, and he asked the question this way, so just stay with me. And if you get upset about it, you can be upset at Bob. But he was just like, if you don't have sex, you're going to die? No, but there is that reality that like love is sacrificial, and that there are other ways to intimately connect with your spouse and get those needs met. Is sex a need? I don't know if it's a need. I think that it's a gift from the Lord that, if done well and with mutual, benefit to both spouses, can be beautiful and amazing. But if a relationship isn't having sex, that doesn't necessarily mean the relationship has to be dead. And so I just say, like, there is an aspect of when you're in a relationship and you're loving somebody, it's even when things are not going the way you want it to. And so just to bring that perspective in, that this is a way that this may be a season where we love and serve our spouse and come alongside them in different ways. Hopefully, as we're both pursuing the answer to why are we not having sex? Why isn't this a part? And so, yeah, I think that's important to just keep in mind.
I would say at times sex might feel like a need, but that doesn't make it a need, because you can live a satisfying single celibate life and never have sex. And we believe that, and we think Scripture teaches that. Mm-hmm. And so that alone should say, it's not a need, because there are single people that have, for very godly reasons, forsaken that in their life, and they're not lesser for it. So if we can get out of that mindset of it's a need, it's a desire, and it's a good desire in my marriage, then I can work towards it, hopefully in humility.